Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. But as we all know, I do not do this program by myself.
That's right. My name is Mike Piroworski. I am your co-host. That's the co-host from the East Coast, the coast with the co-host with the most here on the Rundown. As Craig told you, to a Views Conservative News. It's great to have you here. Welcome back to the program. It's a great day, Craig. It's feeling like right in the middle of the week. I don't know what that's called though.
Well, it might be.
Mike. What day is it, Mike?
It's hump day.
Hump day!
It's hump day.
Hump day!
That's right, folks. It is Hump Day. That's right. It is the middle of the week. It is the day in which we attempt to begin the weekend, sometimes with success, sometimes not. But hey, the fun is in the trying.
Yes, and we try. We make our best effort to start the weekend today on Wednesday, and sometimes successful. At least mentally, my brain slips into weekend mode. That's it. The minimum that I'm going to allow.
Well, exactly, and the whole idea is that we're trying to work a little bit less. I believe in the concept of work hard, play hard, and Monday through Tuesday I work really, really hard. So about midday through Wednesday, I'm about ready to chill.
Yeah, I hear you. Exactly right. I'll put in a good 3-4 hours a day, and I'm beat. It's time to start the weekend. There.
That's about all we got when you get to be our age, man. It's about 50 plus. You're like, yeah, okay, you got me for a good 4 or 5 hours, and then after that, you get what you get.
Can't get in the way of afternoon nap time. So
it becomes a little bit easier once you hit daylight savings time, because then it's already dark out.
Yeah, but you gotta be up from your nap before it gets dark, otherwise you're not getting back up. So yeah.
Or tell me if you've done this one. You've woken up like in the evening, thinking it's early the next morning.
Yes. Yeah. And I do my best. Listen, I'm a nap counselor, Craig. I try to help people have the proper naps, and especially around my house. If you want a nap, it's got to be on a couch, in a lounge chair. It can be in the bed, but it has to be on top of the covers, fully clothed with a light on, or at least light coming in. If you kick your shoes off, if you get under the covers, you're going to bed. That's not a nap. I'm sorry.
I appreciate the distinction. Never really thought about it that way, but now that you've kind of laid out kind of the parameters, it makes total sense.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're just committing to going to sleep and hoping if you wake up, you'll do something again. But that just turns into 8 hours and 9 hours of sleep for somebody then.
Yeah. No way. Not working. But that's kind of like that. Well, you know what? That's actually kind of like what we try to do. Like, beginning the week early. It's like beginning your night early.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
Except not quite as fun.
You're just cheating yourself. That's all you're doing. I mean, nobody needs that much sleep anymore.
No, you don't need to sleep through life, folks.
You're not 10 or 12 years old. You can 3 or 4 hours. You're good. Just relax.
Handling business.
Get back.
Speaking of handling our business, let's give a shout out to our sponsors.
Handle some business. All right. Let's say hello to our good friends over at Hitman Industries. That's hitmanindustries.net. Hitmanindustries.net. If you have bought an AR in the past 5 years, odds are you already have one of their barrels. But now they sell direct to the public, so you can get your next barrel for your AR build or rebarrel the rifle you already have. Hitmanindustries.net. Our good friends at the California Republican Assembly, fighting a good fight behind the enemy line. Make sure you reach out to them and see what you can do to join that fight. And then if you want some awesome tactical gear, some web gear, go over and talk to our good friends at uscombatgear.com.
That's right, folks. By the way, the folks over at California Republican Assembly, if you want to know how to vote, I know early voting's already taken place. I know you've already got your ballots. If you want to know how to vote, who the real conservatives are, the Republican wing of the Republican Party in California, all you got to do is go to cragop.org. That's cragop.org, and click on the endorsements tab. It'll tell you exactly who to vote and how to vote, whether you live in California or you're just registered to vote in California. We allow everyone to vote here in the state of California.
Yeah, not
Sometimes
just
I
once.
wonder, not that I'm advocating for people illegally voting, but sometimes I wonder, I'm like, just because you're a conservative and you leave California, under these new rules, you could probably still vote in California.
Sure. Yeah, it's you might have left California, but that doesn't mean California is not in you, right?
I would love, it's the funniest thing. People who escaped from California, people who get out of California act like people who escaped from prison.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like they're always free and they always have to share with us who are still in California how great it is that they have left. And you know what? That, just so you all know, yeah, that doesn't help at all. Doesn't make us feel any better. It may make you feel better, but when we also know that half the people that are leaving California are also whacked out liberals who are going to vote to ruin wherever you went to,
Right.
I don't feel quite as bad.
Yeah. Listen, well, I ruined my own liberal land. Now I'm going to go try and create one somewhere else. Maybe it's what the reason, your policies that are doing it there, bro.
Right. Not saying, just saying.
Just saying. Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and get into today's news. Early voting, as I just said, has begun in many states, including the state of Georgia. Now, you might recall that according to the President of the United States, Georgia's new voting law, which has been in place for now, this is the second election. There was the primary election, and now there's the general election. This was referred to as Jim Crow 2.0, meaning it was going to be so oppressive. It was going to keep people, in particular people of color, from being able to vote. Well, the numbers are now in. We already know that in the primary election, we know that records were broken in terms of voter turnout as well as early voter turnout. And by the way, voter turnout for people of color, in particular for black folks. Significant numbers. And now we're finding that those numbers have been broken again. That's right, at least so far in early voting. In early voting in Georgia, the first day turnout has been the biggest it's ever been for a midterm election, even bigger than what happened in the primary. More people have shown up. They're saying here that more than 131,000 Georgians have cast votes since early voting began on Monday. I'm beginning to wonder, how are people voting with all of this oppression going on? With all of this Jim Crow? I mean, how are they defying Jim Crow?
It is weird, right, Craig? Because we've heard nothing but the last 2 years of how we're infringing on people's rights. Old people not going to be able to vote. We're taking away food and water and sustenance from them on the day of vote. Everything's been about how we're oppressing minority vote again, and as you just said, and as the news article just said, it doubled voter turnout on day one. I don't know, Craig. You know what it just reminds me of? We can't pass these new more free gun laws because it's going to be mayhem. It's going to be murder in the streets. It's going to be the Old West out here. Oh wait, the crime went down.
So I did those of you who follow the program, if you watch us on the rundown or if you watch us on my channel, you noticed yesterday I did an interview, or not an interview, but I was on a panel and we were talking about are blacks being blocked from voting. And there were two conservatives, Brandon Tatum from the Officer Tatum Show and myself, and there were two liberals. And what was interesting about it was we kept asking them, show us one black person who's been denied the right to vote, right? Show us one, right? Give us one example of someone who has been denied the right to vote, or even show us what exactly in any of these laws is prohibiting specifically black people from being able to vote. And they couldn't name one, not one, in an hour-long show. They were given tons of opportunities, and they couldn't name one.
Well, this one time I had a friend, right, and he got a mouse in a beer bottle, and he knows a cop, and that guy said that if that happens, you get a free case of beer.
Oh, and you can't vote.
Yeah,
he didn't say that. Or he didn't say that.
The example, you're like, well, I heard that. Okay, it could be. It might have been. And you're like, what are you talking about? That's it. They have no answer for you. Same with the again. We're going to pass this new freer gun laws, right? Get us back to what it's supposed to be. And It's going to be murder. It's going to be mayhem. When does that ever happen? It's never happened. But that's always the first response to lie and give the worst case scenario.
Well, and you know what's also funny, Mike, was you remember when the White House was referring to this as Jim Crow 2.0, and you remember, and these are like clips of the media calling this once again calling it Jim Crow or expansion of Jim Crow or Jim Crow 2.0, and yet and still nobody in the media, nobody in the White House regrets referring to it as that. Now, I wasn't around during the original Jim Crow, but I've read the history books. I've looked at I've watched the videos. I've heard the accounts, and what I don't understand, Mike, is how you can even remotely compare the two.
Yeah,
it is offensive to what the people in the 1960s had to go through, or prior to the 1960s had to go through. And the worst part is, Mike, is I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist or that it doesn't happen. What I am saying is when you point to stuff like this and you call it racism and you compare it to dogs and police dogs and fire hoses being used to attack people who simply want their rights, I'm sorry, but if that's racism, then everything is racism. And that's, I think, what they're trying to say is everything. Every time Democrats don't get their way, it is racism, is what they're basically saying.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be the new micro racism. Even if it's not racism, it might be racism, so it's micro racism now.
What? That whole idea of a quote unquote microaggression. I'm sorry. If you've been married at all, you know what a microaggression is. And first of all, it ain't so micro. Just so you know. Look. Okay. It's called putting you in check without putting you on Front Street.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
But
Greg,
I'm like, anytime you feel uncomfortable, it's now a microaggression. And I'm like, maybe you feel uncomfortable because, of you. Maybe you're the problem. Not talking about your skin color. I'm talking about your attitude, right? I'm talking about if you walk around all offended every time someone isn't the way you expect them to be, then they're not the problem. You are.
Right. One thing to clarify, Craig, you said it was the White Housers calling it Jim Crow 2.0, but if you recall, it's not what the president called it. He said it's much worse than Jim Crow. It's Jim Eagle.
Oh, Jim Eagle. That's right. I do recall that one as well. Jim Eagle. Well,
because I guess eagle is worse than a crow, somehow.
Evidently. We respect and we revere eagles.
That's right. Crows, again, it's the mind of Biden. It was. I'm lucky he didn't say Jim Tapioca.
Jim Hummingbird.
Jim. What? It's but you could find out more information about the hummingbird at hummingbirdDOT.com.
Oh, gotta love our current president, because he is just the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to comedy. I just wish he wasn't president.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, moving right along. All right, Mike, you shared with us this one, the JROTC cadet. Now, they every year at a particular football game, they do a armed services night, and an individual, a student, decided that he was going to wear a Confederate uniform for that particular night. And here I'll pull up. There's the picture. There he is on the far right wearing a Confederate uniform. And the idea is to wear uniforms from different eras, right? And
yes.
I found it interesting that a student would decide to wear a Confederate uniform. And I kind of wanted to get your take on this particular story.
I go, what state was this in? Tell me what state this is in.
It's just Confederate uniform. It says the county. I'm trying to find the state. Do you know what state?
Yeah, I just don't. I think I remember the state, but it's a. I can make this assumption. It's a southern state.
I
Okay.
think you are correct. I think I'm 100% sure you are correct. It is. It is
Um,
a. It is in fact a southern state.
here's the issue. Okay. We know, and I'm trying to recall off the top of my head. It was something about 600,000 people in the United States died during the Civil War between the federal army and then the army of the Confederate States of America. Um, After the war, as part of the Reconstruction and the reconsolidation of the southern states into the North, part of the thing that, and we talked about this earlier in the week, which is kind of why this story it grabbed me. The president said, "Look, the only way for us to heal as a nation, rather than to put our southern brothers in jail, rather than to take the politicians and put them away, is to forgive them of those crimes and move on." Now, they did have restrictions. You remember, the politicians were not allowed to hold office ever again, but they could still collect their retirement checks and everything else. They weren't put away. They weren't put in jail. The soldiers, all Confederate soldiers of the United States, declared by Congress, declared by President, and put into U.S. code, were declared to be official United States soldiers. So let me make sure to say that again. All Confederate soldiers were made to be United States soldiers. Okay, you have the sons of the sons of the Civil War. You know that's where the Civil War is where the VFW started from, the Veterans of Foreign War, and it's the veterans of foreign wars. It was not the veterans of the Northern versus the Southern, or the Southern soldiers of the North. It was the veterans of foreign wars. Every one of them, per law in the United States, is an American soldier, a U.S. soldier. Wearing that Confederate uniform during a remembrance, a memorial to all the generations of soldiers before us, is 100% accurate and incredibly respectful in my mind. And if you want to stand there and tell me, because they're wearing a gray uniform and you heard they supported slavery because you've never done a bit of research, then I don't care for you and hope to never have a conversation with you or ever have to sit next to you.
Well, you know what? That was actually a very well-informed perspective, and it's one, by the way, that is historically accurate. In fact, many of the monuments of Robert E. Lee were there and maintained because he took a huge lead amongst Southerners, amongst Southern leaders, and Southern military leaders in particular, to try to heal and get those who were part of the Confederate Army and those who were part of the Confederacy to reunite and re-accept their Americanism. In other words, they didn't want to have a divided America after the Civil War. They wanted to be one America. And many in the Confederate Army, including, once again, Robert E. Lee, went out of his way to make that a reality, to try and heal those wounds that were caused by so many Americans dying during the Civil War.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I mean, it was not just something they did or said. All those Confederate soldiers were now eligible for what would be equivalent of VA care,
Right.
under the federal government. They were the same. They were declared to be soldiers of the United States, and again, for you to, I see a gray uniform and I saw something on CNN, so I'm ignorant. I'm going to say this is racist. You just, actually wish you were sitting next to me, because I would slap you in the face.
Well, you know what it likens, and it's funny because what we're supposed to do after the end of each election is we're supposed to come together and we're supposed to say, okay, well, all right, we didn't win this. If you ever on the losing side, well, we didn't win this one, so that's our president, and we're going to pray that our president does well and is successful and does well for our country, and our nation prospers under their leadership. That's what we're supposed to do after every election, or that's what that's what we're supposed to do. What we're not supposed to do is we're not supposed to say, okay, well, we're now going to do full-blown investigations of our former president and do everything possible to try and find anything that he may have done either before he was in office or while he was in office, so that we can smear his name and have his supporters thrown in jail. Because all that does is continue to divide America, and that's the sort of stuff that they didn't want to have happen. But
Exactly.
as you notice, that's exactly what you have happening right now in this modern day. And then we wonder why we have a divided America.
Well, Craig, I think all their actions against the former president are justified. I mean, he did the mean tweets.
He did do mean tweets, and I'm wondering if it's racially motivated because he is a man of color. That color
Yes,
being orange.
color happens to be though orange. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens to be orange, but you know what they say: orange is the new black.
That's true. Yeah. That's what they say.
Well, anyway, folks, the point is that it's important for people to understand your history. And what this young man was doing was demonstrating that he understands, or at least whoever advised him to wear the uniform understands history. The sad part is that too many of the woke left don't understand history, don't care to understand history. Their desire is to rewrite history in a way in which makes America look bad and evil. And those people, they're really the bad and evil ones.
Yeah, you're correct as usual, Craig. This time,
I try. All right, here in California, we have, you can imagine many of our schools, colleges, and universities, and even high schools have a very interesting perspective on free speech. Their belief on free speech is if you are on the left, you can say whatever you want, whenever you want, and you can be as offensive as you want. If you happen to be on the right, if you happen to be somewhat conservative, well, you don't get to say whatever you want, and we're going to restrict your speech because obviously if you're conservative, whatever you have to say is going to be hateful and offensive. There was a policy that existed in a community college where students were putting out flyers. One of them was talking about communism and comparing it to the overreaching left, which, by the way, it's a pretty apt comparison. The other one was a pro-life flyer. Well, they were told that these things were offensive and they needed to put them on I guess there was a post that was considered a free speech post, and it's like over in some corner, because obviously if we're going to have free speech, let's not actually have it where everybody is, right? Where people will actually read it. You got to put it on that post way over there. They also made it so that they said, well, your flyers don't really talk to any club event or anything like that. And by the way, these are the Young Americans for Freedom. But they said, no, we don't, this isn't saying about any organizational event or anything like that, which, by the way, was not a written policy. So a judge has now overturned or struck down this speech code, right? It's actually, they call it a free speech code, but it actually is a speech code because it was used to only censor folks on one side, and that was conservatives. And the judge made it a point to point out that, look, you don't have a right as a university to censor speech just because you don't like it.
The cornerstone of the First Amendment, right? That's what this was. The government used to, folks under England. Listen, if you stood up against the government, said anything against the government, you went to jail, or even worse, you were not allowed to stand up against the government, allowed to say anything, because if the government didn't like it, you went away. Listen, we just saw, what is this? It's the year 2022. We just saw King Charles in England ascend to the king position, right? And I don't know if you caught the stories, Craig. Those that were standing on the side of the road that were holding, poster boards that said "Abolish the monarchy, it costs too much," they were being arrested, Craig, because guess what? It's illegal to speak against the monarchy and create a disturbance doing so. They were going to jail. They don't have the First Amendment the way we have a First Amendment. And we're talking about something that was 250 years ago that we created, the First Amendment, to guarantee the stuff that the still King of England is doing to censor speech.
Well, and free speech and the First Amendment exists to protect speech that you don't like, right? That the majority doesn't like. That's the point. I don't need free speech to protect something we all agree on.
Yes.
Right? We don't need that, because if we all agree on it, then why does it need protecting? It's to protect that speech that some might consider to be offensive, right? That some might disagree with, in particular when the majority disagrees. And in fact, sometimes the more offensive the speech, the more responsibility the First Amendment has to protect it. Well, just like, I don't believe in white supremacists. And when I say white supremacists, I mean white supremacists in the definition that we've always had, not the one they try to use now, which is basically, well, if you believe in being on time, if you believe in being organized, if you believe in logic and critical thinking, not that white supremacy. I do support that. I support that stuff. They call it white supremacy. But anyway, I'm talking about the white supremacy where, the guys in the hoods or the Nazis with the little mustaches, those guys, those people, right?
Right.
Those people who want to suppress other people's women, suppress other peoples of color simply based on the fact that they believe white people are better. But I will forever support their right to free speech. In my opinion, I think hate speech like that needs to be exposed. People need to see it, need to hear it, because they need to know, number one, that it exists. And if someone really believes that, I would rather know they believe it than have them make me think that, well, they agree with, equality and all of that, and come to find out that they don't.
Yeah, Craig, I want to clarify something. Now, you said, to protect against offensive speech. It's not offensive. Just because you disagree with it does not make it offensive. All right, it doesn't. You're not protected from offensive speech. It's offensive is not the word I use when talking about. Well, it's against the First Amendment. It's offensive. No. Now, the Supreme Court did say we know. Vulgar things, or it could be offensive pornography or things like that. And again, they defined that as they can't put it in writing, but they'll know it when they see it. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about. Well, I don't like President Biden because I think he has dementia. Well, that's offensive. No, it's not offensive. You're an idiot and don't know the definition of the word. You just disagree with me. That's all.
Well, again, we're disagreeing. You and I are just disagreeing on terminology, but our point is the same. We both agree on what we consider to be unprotected or protected speech.
Yeah. Let me say this. I'll finish it with this. Just because you're offended, that doesn't make it offensive.
There you go. Okay, I think that is a beyond accurate description of the point. Anyway, and this judge has basically stood up and said so. So I'm we're starting to see more and more. We're starting to see courts start to stand up against some of this stuff, against some of this government censorship. Because, by the way, folks, that's exactly what this is. This is corporate America. This is academia. This is the government, a left-wing government, actually working together to censor and to limit the speech of people with which they disagree. And I will tell you, that is fascism, period. When you start having the institutions that mold and shape culture and society all working together to push a narrative and silence those who disagree with that narrative, that is fascism.
Yeah, that's tyranny. That's exactly what that is.
That is tyranny, and tyranny needs to be shut down.
Yes. Yep.
All right. Next we have, once again from California. Anyway, so in California, we passed a law that will help. The idea is to get information we have at our California State University at Davis. We have what's called the Gun Violence Research Center, which is basically, it's an anti-gun research group, and they don't really do research. Their goal is to create propaganda that then state actors can use to violate the Second Amendment rights of Californians. And their goal is to eventually expand that. They want to use this data to violate the civil rights of all Americans, in particular that Second Amendment right. Well, one of the laws actually allowed them to take information from gun owners and make that information, personal information, by the way, available to this research center. And by the way, only this research center. Now, we all know that, once you hand something over to a government entity, we know that data is going to get out because California is very, very good at doxing in particular gun owners. We did how horrible California is about databases and all of that, and they do not protect your personal information. Well, a California judge has has ruled to block the release of California gun owners' information, the distribution of our information. As the story leads in, this is last fall, California's oleaginous governor, that's Gavin Mussolini,
I didn't know he was
signed a
from
bill into
Oleaginous.
law that allows the distribution of personal information of the state's gun buyers with academic researchers. And basically what they're saying is, yeah, no, you are not allowed to give this information to quote unquote researchers because this is supposed to be protected information. This is not information that's available to the public. No, you cannot do it. And I say once again, hey, so it's bad news that something like this is law, but we're also seeing federal judge basically say, yeah, no, that's a bad law.
Yes, absolutely, Craig. I don't know if you heard it. You said the oleaginous governor, and I said, oh, I didn't know he was from Oleaginia.
Oleaginia. I did not hear that. That is hilarious.
Old genius, greasy. He's a greasy, slimy guy. Greasy, slimy. Yeah, Craig, listen, you guys are on a roll there. Was this the same judge that struck down your free speech code?
It was actually a different judge.
You know, we've often said, those of us that are on the conservative side, that President Trump's greatest legacy would be refilling the courts to an incredible level with conservative, constitutional-minded judge. Let's say that, not even conservative, constitutional judges that believe in the law of the land rather than on emotion and trying to set new law. Just more examples of that right here. And we see this every day, whether it's 2 years from now or 20 and 30 years from now, when these judges are still on the bench, that will continue to bring back the rule of law in this country. And there's two great victories right here today. I don't even have to look it up, Craig. I could tell you right now that those judges are not liberal judges, but to come to these rulings.
Oh yeah, no, I will tell you the Ninth Circuit in particular, both the appellate court as well as the district court, a number of seats have been filled by conservatives or with conservatives. And it's really created a balance, and it's made it so that going through the Ninth Circuit is not just, I mean, it used to be, you didn't want to file in the Ninth Circuit because you knew you were going to lose. You're going to lose at the district court level, you were going to lose at the appellate court level, and unless you could afford to fight all the way to the Supreme Court and then pray that they would take up your case, you really didn't have a shot. Now you actually have a shot, and we're seeing a ton of success. In fact, this lawsuit was actually filed by the Firearms Policy Coalition. My good friends, folks who I do a lot of work with, host Morning Coffee with Craig with them. Once again, we are seeing now the fruits. And I will continue to say this. If Donald Trump did absolutely nothing else, the transformation he made of the judiciary by actually appointing people who, I don't know, are going to judge based on the law, based on the Constitution, I'm sorry, that is the number one thing that he did. And quite frankly, if that's all that he did, that was enough.
Yep, exactly right.
All righty. Well, we are now here near the end of the show, so guess what it's time for? It's time for our parting shots. Okay, so let's move on to the first one. This first one you are going to love, and this one is Thomas Sowell is one of my favorite political commentators, and there are many things that he says that just seem to make sense. Not things that I didn't already know, didn't already believe, but the way he phrases them are just phenomenal. For example, Thomas Sowell said, "I have never understood why it is greed to want to keep money you have earned, but not greed to take money or to take somebody else's money." I also find it interesting that in their eyes, charity or it being generous with someone else's money is considered to be a moral thing. I don't get that.
Craig, I've told you, listen, and obviously it's done piecemeal, but if you came to my door and you had you were the tax man or whoever you were, and you said, hey, I'm here to take 60% of everything. That's a robbery. That's what that is. You'd get shot in the face. Okay. I think about what those people that make over 400,000 a year, those people that make over a million a year, everything over that in some states is taxed up to 90%. If you
Right.
came to my house and said, give me 90%, you listen, I got a lot of property in a backhoe. We could settle this right now.
Notice to tax collectors who might show up at Mikey P's door.
Oh, I'm just that's all right. I don't even have there's no address out front. We're cool. Yeah.
Now, in case you weren't aware, Mike, you know that according to the President of the United States, we are potentially facing a pending Armageddon because you have Russia who is now hinting at the use of nuclear weapons. But we can all feel safe now because the Vice President Kamala Harris, she says that the Biden administration is committed to making sure that the coming nuclear Armageddon is equitable, diverse, and affirming.
Yes, yeah, I am, and I think she also is trying to get the first strike against minorities, so make sure they get first in line. Yeah,
right. They get to be well, considering the fact that they're probably going to go after major big cities first. I think that's pretty much going to be a given.
Yeah, there you go. See, works out.
All right, and this last one is for California. California by 2026 or 2020, no, by 2024, 25% of all vehicles sold in California are required to be electric vehicles. By 2030, I believe it's supposed to be over 60%, and then by 2035, 100% of new vehicles sold in California are supposed to be electric vehicles. And in honor of that, we actually would like to honor one of the most popular electric vehicles that's being sold right now, and that is the Ford F-150 Lightning. That's right. The Ford F-150 Lightning is supposed to have, you're supposed to be able to go somewhere around 300 miles in this thing. But such may not necessarily be the case because Ford is now promoting their forward storage space, and it says here it's got a picture of the F-150, and it's got the front storage space, and it says it's so nice that the new electric Ford F-150 pickup has a convenient front storage space, so you can store the gas generator you'll need to charge it when you go anywhere.
Yeah, Craig. Listen, and again, hold the picture up there. The F-150, it's a nice looking truck. It's an F-150, right? But if you try to do anything with it, like put stuff in the bed or tow anything, the range goes from 300 miles down to like 60 miles max. So, if you try to do truck stuff with the truck, you're not going to have a truck anymore. But Craig, I found it interesting that they went with a couple of Mexican gunslingers here. They got their gun belts on. One's got a lasso or rope around his shoulder there, like they're heading off to fight for Mexican freedom or something. It's kind of weird.
No, that's an extension cord, and those are tool belts.
What? Are you?
That's a hammer. I think that's a nail gun she has in her hand.
I got to get a bigger monitor. Okay.
You got to get a bigger monitor.
All right. I did see, Craig, a little blurb today. There's a woman stopped at the gas station there in California with her kids, and she showed them. It was a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old boy. She showed them how to pump gas, right? And the 10-year-old said, "Mom, I don't have to worry about this. We'll be driving electric cars when we get older." And the older one said, "Mom, this is like that time you showed us how to use a payphone."
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, it's that time once again. Please let the folks know a little bit about our sponsors.
That's it. Reach out to our good friends at Hitman Industries. That's hitmanindustries.net. Make sure you take care of all your AR barrel needs. Look up the California Republican Assembly, fighting a good fight behind the enemy lines. They could use a little help with your dollar bills. And then, of course, when you want some awesome combat gear, some awesome tactical gear, go to US Combat Gear, DOT.com.
That's right, folks. These are our sponsors. They bring us to you so that we can hopefully bring you to them. So do us a favor. Follow the links in the description to this program. Check them out. If you like what you see, spend some money with them. Become a member. Whatever you got to do to let them know that you support them, and make sure you tell them that it was the guys over at the Rundown that sent you. With that, we're going to call it a day. We're going to be back tomorrow, though. Thirsty Thursday. Fun day. We always enjoy Thursday. We're a little bit closer to actually realizing our weekend. But until then, you guys have fun.
Go Padres.